sir.
Looks just like you. Where's the hat?
On the table. How you been?
Good, good, good.
I think I. No.
Hello.
How are you, sir?
Here's a book might be of interest to you. It's a big bottle show. It mentions a bottle that sold for 200,000,
Oh, really?
but there are bottles that commonly go for a hundred
Oh,
thousand
yeah,
dollars.
yeah.
I'm a
Thank
big
you.
bottle collector.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, that's a big.
I actually sell bottles.
Yeah, I was at your
Yeah,
stand
yeah.
yesterday. Yeah, I wrote a book on Dauphin County milk bottles.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. So,
Oh, thank you, brother. I
yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah, Moose
Yeah.
nickname.
All right, Moose. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Make sure you grab a card, and then that way everyone will keep in touch.
yeah.
Right on the table.
You got, you
Thank you,
could have
Moose.
one of those bottles. I'd like 100,000.
Yeah.
I've been metal detecting for years.
Well, talking to you again, Liz.
That's nice.
Yeah, that was very nice. Always meet good people at these things.
It's nice when, you all have the same hobbies. Something you, I get you have a passion for this.
Well, I would hope after all these years you get that.
That's why I support it.
You have, you always have.
Have you dug on the parade grounds for Camp Meade?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but my friend owned that old house there for years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Farr owned it, and then this other guy, Bruce, owned it.
Yeah.
We found a lot of
Yeah.
stuff there.
Yeah, I've been at Bruce's quite a few times.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Yep.
okay, yep, okay.
All right, Bruce.
Look here.
I love it. I would come in, I'd come out to that Johnny Oil song every time.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I love that series.
Oh, my God.
And there's a book you can find out of British Yes,
Yes, yep, yeah.
Gosh, I should. I love that book. And it really it's very entertaining.
Absolutely. Well, it was good meeting you.
I'm Terry Hartzell.
Terry. Dustin. Yeah, not one. I love Ron.
Oh, okay.
I call him Big Ron.
Big Rock, yes.
Okay, we're gonna get started in a couple seconds here. That's what I'm gonna say. Do these. Okay, welcome everybody. Help yourself to coffee, tea, and goodies over there. And anything on this table here, the papers, anything in the books, they're free, so help yourself to anything you might want. Welcome to the Lower Swatara Township Historic Preservation Society. I'm Nancy Gavelies. And I wanted to just let you know about the next presentation we're gonna have is on November 21st, and that's gonna be with Faye Shope Fair. If anybody heard her presentation on the Shope Gardens, it was excellent. That was her family farm, and they actually lived in Tinian for a while, and that's the subject that we're gonna have on November 21st, Tinian. And that is our last presentation of the year, and I also bring lots of pie. So there's always pumpkin pie, pecan pie, all the good stuff, okay? The one thing we need for 2025 is we need speakers. Usually I have a couple lined up by now, and I have 0. So for this to keep going, somebody has to get out of their comfort zone and come and speak on some kind of historical subject. I have lots of topics. I can help you research. I can help you do PowerPoints. Don't be afraid to be one of our speakers. And it can be on anything. You might have some old photos up in the attic. You might have a letter from the Civil War that was one of your relatives. It doesn't really matter what it is. We'd love to hear about it. And tonight we have Dustin Dutch Boy D'Agostino with us. He's a local history detective, collector of all things old. Dustin was actually our very first presentation, so I owe a lot to him. He was the first one willing to come and talk. For 15 years, Dustin has saved history lost in the ground with meticulous research, positive interactions with property owners, metal detection, and digging tools. And Dustin has his own YouTube channel, and I'll try to get it up after he starts speaking. Dustin lives in Harrisburg with his wife Paula, over here, and that's his high school sweetheart, and together they have 2 adult children. And Dustin has always had a passion for history, and especially American history. And he's been at my farm, and he's helped detect. He's actually gonna come back. I keep bugging him about this, but he's gonna come back and help me do my property lines, like the survey posts, so we're gonna find them and mark them a little bit more clearly. So he's a great person, great friend. So without further ado, Dustin.
Thank you, Nancy.
How about that, Nancy? I welcome all of you, and I'll just get started with a little more about my background. I served in the United States Armed Forces, been married coming on 27 years. Grew up in Harrisburg and had a love and passion for Middletown. Once I had a friend show me where Falmouth was, I was hooked because I'm a fisherman. So Falmouth, Red Hill Dam, you know, that's what first brought me out. And then as I got older into metal detecting and bottle digging and privy digging, it was just a natural crossover because I was already at the old properties to begin with and along the river. So, and even the Swatara Creek. So that's kind of where I cut my teeth, when, you know, from probably 16, 17 years old until today. I'm still always out there exploring and looking for new pieces of history. And tonight I have a couple special pieces to talk about that will really bring to light what this area means to the history of the United States. And to also put in perspective how old this area really is, and that we have a need to save the history. You know, once we save that history and we have it in places like Penn State or State Museum, then it's there for everyone to see. No one can deny it, and it's the history, it's the truth, it's what happened, and that's why I believe in what I do. And one of the first things that I believe in is I'm here to honor and preserve history to the best of my abilities. I'm not looking for the rich stuff, although my wife would like me to find more. But I'm in it for the history. I'm in it to...
Good morning, everyone.
Oh, good morning. I don't know who that was. But I'm in it for the history. I'm in it for finding out the history behind certain things and honoring those that came before me for their sacrifices. And in this township, Lower Swatara Township, you have, even in Swatara Township, you have Middletown, High Spire, all these areas were the hub for our agriculture in this area. And they didn't call it Middletown by accident. You know, it's midway between Philadelphia and Carlisle. So that's hence where you get the name Middletown. So it's been around even before this became a country, just so you all know.
What's that?
Yeah, Lancaster, Carlisle, but you still had Philly there too, but I agree. I just went a little further because it started there. Anyway, yes, Lancaster was also a key point in history as well. And one of the things that's funny is this was Lancaster County. So, and that was something I didn't realize until maybe about 15, 20 years ago. But yeah, this was Lancaster County, and I think it may have even reached over the West Shore in some spots. I'm just not as positive on that, but this was Lancaster County. And when I'm out doing what I do, I'm always looking at the soil. And there's no better thing than seeing that red clay soil, and you know you're either in Middletown or Lancaster. You know, it's not like that everywhere. And I've detected out west, up north, down south, you know, so I always miss that red clay. So with that said, how do I do the things that I do? The first thing I do is find an area or a property that, you know, struck my eyes, something that may have some importance to it, some age to it, something to tell. And with that, I then go to my main research tool, beyond these, okay? And that's the computer. And there are certain things that we as the public have access, and one of them is parcel views. So you can look at anyone's property line and get some information, glean information off that to at least direct you to the owner. And then from that point, I look at, they have historical aerial views, is what it's called, and then they have pen pilot. And there's a bunch of other stuff out there too. I use the United States Congress Library for some certain things, older maps that go beyond the, I think it's 1858 is the date, that's the most common date map in Dauphin County. So, head to my computer, I find out what I want to know, I get get to the point where I go to meet the owner of the house. Now, this is always the tough point because you have to walk up and basically sell yourself to an individual who has no flipping idea who you are. So the main thing you want to do, in my case, is represent myself pretty well.
I'll dress in khakis and a nice t-shirt or even a collared shirt. And I will go out
And I will knock on the door. And for me, it's easy because I'm actually interested in their property. And generally, most property owners are really willing and able to tell you about their property because they have feelings for it as well. And their strong feelings usually get me in the door, and I let them know I'm not here to dig up your yard. I'm not here to find all kinds of rich stuff and walk off and never see you again. You know, that's not what I do. I'm here to try to get a story of what's going on. And once I'm done with that introduction, I usually do pretty good. There's some people that will slam the door right in your face. There's some people that won't shake your hand, pay you any common courtesy or respect, and you just have to grin and bear it because it is their property. And I don't have too many of that. In fact, there was a letter up front from a good friend of mine, Ed Fox, and he has a little farm out off Longview Road, and that's, I think, mid-1800s, and we had done some research out there. And when he saw his little presentation, he mailed in a letter just stating his experience with me, and that kind of moved me. And so I brought it here because you don't get that. You know how it is in the real world. You hear about the bad stuff, you don't hear about the good stuff. So that meant a lot to me. Once I get past the introduction and getting to learn the property, because one thing I'll tell you, that 9 times out of 10, that property owner will walk you all through the property. Some will take you inside, they're that proud, and I don't blame them. I mean, there's beautiful architecture all through our township, there really is. And with that said, I then move on to my metal detector. And with this to me is one of the greatest things now that we have more technology. I can pretty much tell what's in the ground before I even need to dig in it. And it's never been like that before. Before it was either you knew it was a high threshold metal tone or a low. And over the years, we've dialed it in with the technology, and you can pretty much, you don't know for certain because you always kick yourself in the head, what if? That was still a good signal, but you'll know if it's a nail, you'll know if it's iron, you'll know if it's silver, or brass, or gold. Gold is probably the toughest out of all of them because it fluctuates in that lower field. So, but the rest, it's like, if I hit a 21, 23 on this screen, I know it's a penny. I know it's gonna be in that range. So that's the nice thing about this hobby now, is you don't have to go in and dig up someone's yard. The next thing will be this. Oh my goodness, look at that thing. I can make a hole for right here, okay, just using this much of it, and I can do about an 8-inch diameter, and they call it a plug or a semi-plug. And what you do is you dig a semi-plug in the ground like that with a hinge, so you can just push it back over. When you have that together, okay, when you have that hinge on there, that gives you water. Water will come through that. So you still have it hooked to the rest of the root system. So that's why we do what's called a semi-plug. If someone does a complete plug and takes it out of the ground and puts it to the side to extract what they're looking for, when they put that plug back in, if it's dry, like I was telling Nancy why I haven't metal detected much this year because it's been dry. And I don't want to go hurting anyone's yards, like that's not what I'm in it for. So you wait, and you wait for the right conditions. A nice rainy day, the day after a rainy day, fall, spring, those times of year. But in the middle of summer, when it gets real hot, you don't want to do that. But the semi-plug, what happens is it keeps the root system together. So you flip that back over, and as soon as it rains, that rain will travel through the root system. It will eventually go back down, you know, through what I dug up, and it's back to new. And you don't even know it. I mean, I had pictures I should have brought, and it is just yards that you can't tell I was in. You can't. Now, if it's a dirty, messed up spot that didn't have grass to begin with, well, yeah, I can't make dirt look better than dirt. But yeah, that's what happens when we find it. The other thing we use is called, and they're so annoying to people because, well, now it's not going to work. Oh, it died. Well, you're no good for show and tell. Okay, so the battery died, but this is called a pinpoint. So you stick that into the ground, and instead of having to dig and keep digging and digging, this will tell you right in the hole where that item is located. So once again, another tool to keep from digging bigger holes. Back in the day, they would dig a real circle, okay, a plug, and that's how they did it. And now over the last like 10 to 15 years, we've had to have more etiquette and more rules to what we do, you know, to protect the people that are letting us on their properties. The rest are knee pads, because I'm getting old, so I can't go anywhere without the knee pads. There's gloves, because you always have shards of glass and nails and stuff like that in the ground. And once I get to the point where I start actually pulling stuff up and taking it home to identify it, there's like this little computer machine I have, and it is a digital microscope. So I can put a coin under right here, turn on the light, and to the human eye, it could look like nothing. But when you bring it up on the screen, it magnifies it to the point where you can find out what it is. That's the latest addition to my arsenal, and I love it. Because in this area, there's a lot of old stuff. A lot of it you can't read just by looking at it. So that's one of the things, along with I have a loop. You ever see the loops, the little jeweler's loop? I have that. I have just about anything to try to magnify that so I can get to it. Now here's where we're at. We know what I use. We know how I get to the door to ask. We know I'm out there and I'm looking. These are the tools I use to look. These are what I find. And what I find in this township is amazing. The one thing I have over here, and it's probably one of my better finds, is a 1662 commemorative coupling to celebrate the marriage of King Charles II to Princess Braganza, daughter of the King of Portugal. I thought it was a Cracker Jack toy. Honestly, when I found it, it was like after a real hot day, it was the last thing I found. It was on one of them little low to mid signals. I saw it and I'm like, great, a Cracker Jack toy. I'm going home. And that's how I ended the day. And I probably let it sit for a couple months, and then one day I was like, well, let me look at it. Nah, in Cracker Jack, I looked up every toy they ever made. They have a pretty good catalog of that. Nope. So then I went through Google Lens and through different channels, and finally ended up on a website in England with the Museum of England. And on that museum, they have different maps showing different sections in the UK where these buttons have been found. There's not a lot of them, and there's nothing in writing saying that that's what they are. Like, there's nothing, what I read to you about, this is what they think it was for the wedding, there's still not a document they can find or a mint maker to prove that's it either. But they pretty much, in England, that's what they surmise. I wouldn't know the difference. But some of the things that are pretty interesting when you think of the age, 362 years old, okay, we were not a country. It was 70 years before George Washington was born. There was only 7 established colonies, and they were all owned by Britain. So just some things to think about when we're like, why is he so passionate? You know, well, that's one of the reasons. And the location we found it at, it was a location where I found about 30 what we call colonial coins. And they were King George's, the second and third, which were from 1727 to 1807. So, you know, once again, we didn't even get to the War of 1812 yet. And, you know, we have all this colonial coinage here in the township. And what's it doing here, you know? Well, we found on the field that, well, we surmised through research and tracking where we found each one. You know, we do actually, someone had asked me about putting the GPS coordinates in, and we do that through OnX. And through OnX, which is a hunting tracking device that shows you the borders around where people live, you can pinpoint exactly where you find stuff. And it was a road. It was a road that led from one part of the township to another. And the only thing we could surmise out of it is it was a tavern, because right across from it, going over to Swatara, was a ford, a clear ford that, you know, they call it a ford, where you go across the creek or the river, and that's where it came off of. And it was just very interesting, you know, trying to put together what's this doing here, what's up with the time period of what I'm finding here. And, you know, like I said, it's all English. You know, there's nothing American to see. We also, in this township, I found a lot of, they're called 8 reals. You might have heard of them, like on pirate movies and stuff. You know, I have 8 real, 2 real, and it's Spanish coinage, but it's from different colonies that they own. So there were some from Peru. I think there was Mexico City, Lima, Peru, and I think there's one other place that it slips my mind. But this township has it. So I found them in this township, not very far from here, and not very far from here at all. And what's interesting about that is we were using this coinage. We had none of our own. That wasn't established until 1792. So there was no United States anything. So everything we had was either Spanish, English, or Dutch, or whatever. But the Spanish and English coins, they fared better because of the people backing them, because Spain was an empire, and England was an empire. Basically, the other countries ended up having to use silver and gold, which was the Spanish and English. Some of the other things found, one last thing, the reals, they're from the 1500s to the 1800s, but the one I found, in the best condition, it's from 1794. So that was pretty nice. And it was in a spot where they actually did work putting in a drain pipe. And what they did is they moved everything off, dug down, put the drain pipe in, moved everything back. And when they did that, they flipped it so that it was only a few inches under the ground. You never, as a detectorist, you never expect to walk over a drain and get something like that. Usually the pipe from the drain drives you nuts, but this one was down deeper, and I just couldn't believe it. And it's within 300 yards of here. Sir?
Can I ask a question about the farm?
Yeah.
Those coins, some for silver and gold, metal, precious metal.
Yeah. Yes.
What were the other ones made of? Not so precious.
Copper.
Oh,
And with this clay soil, it just eats that copper up. Yeah, the copper doesn't come out as nice as the silver and gold, that's for sure. Good question. Other things I find that are quite common to the area is, as you know, in the 1800s, the area really exploded. And I find a lot of Indian head pennies. You know, they started in 1859 to I think 1901. So, you know, that little brief time period, I found a gazillion of them in the township. A gazillion of wheat pennies. They're like everywhere. It's like, all on the longer trail, but we get so many of them. Buffalo nickels are common. We get a lot of buffalo nickels around here. And barber dimes. Now you notice I didn't say about quarters, or half dollars or dollars. Those are coins that they do come up around here, but they're really rare. It's hard, and one of the reasons why is after World War II, that's when this hobby took off. The guys coming home with their minesweeping equipment started this off. Then the guys from Vietnam had even better stuff. So these guys came home, and that, like, the bigger the coin, the higher the tone, it's going to explode your earphones, like really ring. Stuff like that they found right off the bat, from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. That's why these machines will go down like 2-3 feet in the right condition. Another thing we find are buckles, bells. I have bells up here, crotal bells, sleigh bells, just everything up there. I have marbles, find a lot of marbles, a lot of jewelry, rings. Once again, rings I found right next door at Harmony Hall. The owner there, Karen, was nice enough, and there's actually, if you go into Karen to her office, there's a display there with all the things I found. And what the significance of that was is Camp Meade was in Lower Swatara Township, and there used to be a debate of whether or not that was true, and it is true. Camp Meade was in the way the township split, lined out. It was here. Yes, sir. Every time there's like a trashy area where kids played, and you dig up just something else, like you dig up something metal, there's always marbles. You know what? Everyone says the same thing. Well, I didn't find it on a metal detector. It's just when kids played, they played in certain areas back in the day. They don't even go outside the door today. Don't do that. But back then, even when I was a kid, I played with my army men in one spot in the yard. And so, yeah, you go out there. I found a German swirl. It's just got swirls all through it. It's a shooter, which is a bigger marble, but it's from the 1800s. I found Bennington marbles from the 1800s, which were made here in Ohio. So there's a lot of history you find when you're digging for other things. It's so common that if you look at that jar, I probably have 20 or 30 of my best ones on displayers in my house that I didn't bring. You find that many. And one time a kid must have just left playing marbles, in the 60s, had his whole set out. So marbles and stuff like that, porcelain, bottles, all that, when I'm out there, there's a box right here, you guys can touch anything in it. It's open. That's what I call the other stuff. That's not even the other stuff. The other stuff is tin cans and pop tops. But I don't save that stuff. But the stuff over here, anyone can touch it, look at it, pick it up, see if they can identify it, ask about it. That stuff is what you find 9 times out of 10 before you find the good stuff. And that, trust me, that's just a little bit. We end up emptying our bags, 2-3 times, while we're out because they get so heavy. You're like, so, yes, sir.
Your detector work underwater, and have you find anything underwater?
Yes, it does, and I don't like being underwater. I was crossing Duncannon onto an island, and the 2 guys in front of me, of course, were, like 6 foot, which to me, I'm 5'5", everyone's 6 foot. And they're going, we're like, yeah, follow us. And I stepped into a pocket, and everything went under, and then I just, got my detector up, but it is waterproof up to, I think it's 100 feet. So you can go, and I have seen people use these, and a friend of mine, his name's Bo Emmett, okay? they call him the Aqua Chigger. And I've actually had him in this area. Well, he has a BBC show called River Hunters. And what they do is they go out with their detectors and they get into the rivers in like England and Scotland, and they're finding really old antiquities. But yeah, it is waterproof, but I'm not.
Can you swim?
No. I can float.
Sir?
Yeah, my best friend, his name's Frank Magaro. He hunts with me, and he's generally in my videos. And then I've developed friendships with some other people in the hobby, and we always go to their place. They come to mine. But generally, I'm with Frank most of the time, and he's a real good guy. I call him my fat panda. Sorry, Frank. But anyways, the finds here, a lot of buttons. If you look in the button box, you'll see these big round ones. Well, they're called dandy buttons. So back in the day, a dandy, which would be a rich person, considered a rich person, they wouldn't have like regular sized buttons like everyone else. They would have big buttons with floral designs and all kinds of special stuff. Basically a brooch for guys. But that's what they had. And you'll find some of them. And the significance of that, once again, is you're looking at 1500s to 1700s. And this whole township, if you take a look around at what's going on with the development, come on, we're losing so much land so quick that guys can't even get in and detect. And now, I do know one of the owners of some of the big properties that do that. And I do know they go through the requirements that the state have for them. But even with that, generally an archaeologist won't pay too much attention unless it's something on a grand scale. But for us, it's a piece of our history. And instead, there ended up being warehouses, and more warehouses, and more warehouses. And to me, it's almost painful. Because I don't want anything more than to find out what was there first and put it out for everyone else to consume, so everyone else can see it and we can all share in the history. And a lot of that's really coming to a head. I mean, right out here, the Messick farm gone, it's a great cause. I mean, the people going in, at least at the school, it's a school, but still, that's gone. And we know darn well the fields above it are going to be going too. And we don't know what that'll be. And, it's hard as a property owner myself, to say, hey, I wish this wasn't happening, but it is the owner's right to do what he pleases, or she. And, but still, the history's disappearing. And, I'm trying to get everyone to get out and say, hey, let's go ahead and try to save some of this. Let me do what I can do. Obviously, looking around, not everyone's going to go out and dig a big hole and, try to look for stuff. But, if you know people that have older homes or some historic value to their home, let someone know. Now, I'm not saying open the door for any kid that comes up with his Metallica t-shirt, dirty clothes. If they can't represent themselves well, you shouldn't let them on your property. But if you have someone that's going to come up and respect your property, stay in touch with you, and try to help you learn more, that's a good person. They're out there doing something worthwhile, and that's what I enjoy doing. A lot of the finds, I was starting to touch earlier on why don't we see the bigger coinage, and I told you that. Well, why am I seeing the barber diamonds? Well, they're smaller, and the silver content is less than what it would be for the bigger items. So it doesn't scream out in your machine so much.
One of the common years is 1898. That's the most common year of barber diamond, 1897, 1898, 1899.
And a lot of them are found in this area because of Camp Meade. Now, I didn't want to touch a lot on Camp Meade because I'm looking around and I know some of you guys are here for my Camp Meade presentation, and I know others have done presentation on the camp. But if you didn't know, it's a camp that came late in the 1890s, around 1898, and it was in and out of business for the next 3 years. And their business was bringing people in to either ship overseas, and then after the Spanish-American War, they came back and they mustered out through Camp Meade. And the last mustering was from the Philippine War, which a lot of people don't realize they consider a separate war. So when you had the Spanish-American War, when that ended, we weren't satisfied. We went to war with the Philippines. And as you go further in your world history, you can see the relevance of what happens in the 40s because we took the Philippines from Spain in the 1900s. So it's just interesting how that history would tie in going forward. And the camp was pretty unique. They did the camp here because of humidity. They came from Camp Alger, which was in Virginia, and they had a breakout of, I think it was typhoid or typhus. As soon as you get into anything that starts with Ty, I don't really know what it is unless it's food. And so they had an outbreak, and we'll just call it dysentery at this point. So everyone was sick there. They brought them out here. The Army Corps engineer, they came through. They saw that we had a lot of wells in the area, a lot of springs in the area. And sometimes when you look through the township, you'll still see the terracotta pipes in different spots, and they were part of the water system that used to be used. And when they did that, they brought the people out and acclimated them to the humidity. And I don't think anyone from Camp Meade actually shipped to Spain during the war. So I don't believe that anyone actually left the camp to actually go fight in the war. It was a very short affair, very short. But the camp did have people that passed away in the camp. I do believe it was over 20-some soldiers did perish. I'm not quite sure where they're buried, but I'd be interested if anyone knew of where any of the Camp Meade soldiers are laid, because it is documented through the United States archives that I think it was 26 perished. I didn't get some details of it. It's just all it said in the brief statement. But the camp, they also had black soldiers as well, which they were trying to acclimate to get to overseas because they believed that they would acclimate better than the white soldiers. I mean, I guess if they came from down south, that might make sense, and I do think that's where the Rough Riders came, either from the South or Midwest or the Southwest to start before the Indian Wars. So, they started with the Indian Wars on the West, and then they took them from the Southwest and brought them down to Virginia. I said that wrong. So, it was all about getting everyone acclimated to go to war. And then when it didn't materialize, then it was all about mustering people out as quickly as they could. At its highest peak of people, there was over 30,000 people here at one time. Not running through, but at the peak of Ice Fire being full, fields in Middletown being full, fields out in our district in our township being full of soldiers, just everywhere. And there's there's a gentleman named Fred who they had the exhibit that Nancy was telling me about. He wrote a really good book on it. I have a friend named Ron. That's someone you need to get for a speaker, because he knows every inch of where everyone was, which is kind of hard to do. I know there's a map that's printed out, but even that map isn't as accurate as one would think, because they're showing an area, but they don't know the exact where at in the area, or if that area, is a little off to the left or to the right. So just interesting knowing that there was that many soldiers here. And with that, we found numerous relics, badges, buttons. I don't know what it was. Lots of shell casings. And it doesn't seem like it was hunting. Okay? So my thought is they did a lot of shooting up in the air. I know they did shooting practice where they shot from Middletown High School and they shot up into, it used to be called Nauman's Farm, and I don't know who owns it now, but they would shoot from Middletown to their house. We found where the bullets were hitting in the ground, and we dug out thousands of lead bullets. And it's just interesting to know how the grounds were used. Down part of the high school property, there was a gentleman named Leo, and he owned that, a house that burned down. And that house, which is at the end of that field, that was part of one of the Camp B, well, all of the whole high school, all of the middle school, that whole section was all camp. I know one guy, he goes in, you know, when he can, and he'll get relics right off the soccer and football practice fields. But all through there, all that history, it's just been sitting there, and now we're losing it more and more and more. And, you know, I just think it's time that maybe we step up and do something about it, you know? And try to help out and let people know, hey, talk to a relative. You know, I know you have this old house, you know, let's get someone to research it, you know? I've done stuff for people where they wanted to find personal effects for their location, and we've done that. You know, we've brought out where, you know, we've given them stuff. I have one guy, I have a whole tray to give once I clean it up. It's getting pretty late, I need to clean it up. But, you know, once I get that all cleaned up and researched, which usually takes me about 6 months because the research isn't as easy as one would think. And also to clean it. The one thing I didn't bring here were the tools I use to clean the coins and to clean the relics I do find, which are like little wire brushes, lead pencils. There's a ton of stuff that you can use, solvents, you know, silver cleaners, CLR for the rusty iron stuff that you just can't get. And I even Dremel some stuff to get the stuff off. But we need to get out there and we need to try to save that history. And that's kind of what I'm here for, is just to make sure you guys are with that. And if in any way you can go out there and help save history, even if you want to get a metal detector, get a metal detector. It's great exercise. It's what's kept me alive like the last 5-6 years. You know, prior to that, I took it, you know, for granted. I took my health for granted. And then over the last 5-6 years, I've been getting, you know, feeling poorly and having stuff. And the detecting keeps me moving. Gets me out of her hair, and it keeps me moving. And so, you know, if you guys even want to do it yourself, I don't discourage anyone. I say go for it. Don't go out and buy something expensive. You don't need it. Okay? But go out and have some fun, do some walking. I've had her, you asked me about the parade field. I had her on the parade field, right? Sitting after they cut the stalks of corn back in the day. I had her sitting in a lawn chair at the top of the field while I went detecting. She sat up there looking over the horizon, you know, at everything, reading the book while I'm out there just having fun. And, you know, so anyone that wants to go do something, it's a good thing to do. Does anyone have any other questions? Sir?
What's the average time you spend
Generally, I'll detect all day if there's stuff too far. But when I get out there, depending on if someone was there before me, or if there was earth move, that's a big thing that people don't realize. A lot of the houses in the township, the earth was moved around. So in some cases, you know, dirt was pushed one way or pushed the other, and sometimes you don't get any signals. I mean, there's days you go out, and I might be out, I usually give it an hour or two, and if I don't find anything leading me on, then I'll bounce to either another spot on that property, or if it's a house and I'm going around it a couple times, you know, you just gotta move on. But generally, when I'm out, I'm usually finding things, because you got to kind of do the research. If there's a house out in the open in front of everyone, everyone's going to ask to detect that through time, you know. So that's not the house I want to go to. I want to go to the house that no one went to. or very few people ever went to. So that's kind of, if that answers that question for you. Sometimes you get nothing, and sometimes it's a field day. There's a lot of times you get nothing, except junk. You always find something. Okay, if you're just talking something, there's always something in the ground. And it's one thing we do, as we're going through, we're pulling all that metal trash out of the ground. You know, because that doesn't break down. So you pull that out and then we throw it away. So even while we're out there doing what we do, we're kind of doing, you know, Mother Nature a favor as well. And trust me, there's a lot of fill through all the township. Wherever there was a road, chances are your front yard is filled. Excuse me. So any other questions?
Have you found any gold coins in the township?
I have not, but I found a gold wedding band. And I took it home. I was so happy I told my wife I found gold wedding. I found gold. Now I found gold lockets and some other stuff. They're in one box. And I said, oh man, I'm showing it. It was 3.8 grams. So it's got some weight to it. And it's, you know, an older ring, you can tell by the way they're worn and whatnot. And I'm showing it to my wife, and I haven't seen it since.
Your wife or the ring?
No, she's always there. And she cleaned it up, and she eventually put it around one of her chains, and she wears it on and off now. But no gold coins. I'd like to. They're hard to find. I mean, where the spot where we found the button and a lot of that colonial copper, can't get on it anymore. That would be a spot where I think there probably could be, because it's a tough signal. You know, like silver just is solid. It's within one or two little micro beeps of each other. But gold, it could be a couple different things. And it's jittery. It's never really a solid thing. And what I mean is when you're going over things, you have tones. And that tone will help to tell you what the things are. And, you know, like I said, with certain things, the tone will really stand out. But gold is usually one of the tougher ones. That actually, like, the gold ring I found rung up between aluminum and copper. So, you know, it's difficult. And yet brass will go high like silver will. You know, it's odd. It's just the detector. My detector could be different. Oh, I'm sorry. My detector could be different from other makers, but that's how it is with mine. Anybody else? I breezed through this one, didn't I? Yes, sir. Yeah. Well, when you have gold, when you have the precious metal, you have something behind it. Yeah, right, and that came from the Depression. I think that was Roosevelt, and he wanted to print more paper, kind of like we had the president not too long ago who wanted to print paper, and that's what happened. You know, a lot of paper got printed, and for Roosevelt, it was, you know, they took a lot of the gold, they bought a lot of the gold coins back, and I guess the mint melted them. I'm not sure. Oh, back then, no. I mean, they had silver and gold. Those were the commodities. And copper wasn't really as big of a. I mean, copper goes back. I mean, it goes back to Rome. I mean, copper goes far back. You know, in civilization. And so does silver, and so does gold. I mean, they are the three precious commodities. even right now, copper, if you had 145 copper pennies, you'd get $5 for it. I don't know if that's the follow of precious metals right now, but that's how out of whack it is. That it's $4.99 a pound with copper. And that's 145 copper pennies. So, real copper pennies. 82 or older. Oh, I don't. I'm just telling you that's where we're at right now. You can't really, because you can't melt copper. As far oh yeah, the bank won't do that. Really, you'd have to. It would be non-sanctioned. I don't think it's legal, no matter what, with copper pennies. But it's just how bad things are that the value is so out of whack on some things. But it's all about that crappy pennies. I have a whole big jug full of copper pennies from my family or my wife's family had a family business, and it ended right after copper went to zinc. So after that they were out of it. They were no longer in business, but we had thousands of copper pennies. But I don't think it'll ever come to that. It's just weird that like right now that's what copper's worth, and normally it's not that expensive. Silver's over $30 an ounce, gold's at 25 something an ounce. So they're all at records right now. I don't get rid of everything. I keep it all. Show that that's still happening. But I mean, the coins I find, they not only have historic value. They were with Camp Meade, and not only just the value of the silver, some of them, the conditions they're in, are worth even more. One coin I have is a copper, and it looks, if you look at the coppers, there's a line going through it. It was called a colonial counterfeit coin. And what they would do is they would counter stamp just a piece of copper, I guess, to look like a coin. And then you would never know the difference until it started to wear off. And I found one of those coins as well. And that's just for that one little coin, probably like $300-$400. Because they're so rare. And because back then when they would find these, that was a big to-do. You get, I don't know if you got put in the cuffs, the stocks or not, but that was a big deal. And to get off the metal just for 1 second and talk about this township, another thing I find a lot of are horseshoes, buckles, and suspender clips. And where that's significant is, if you had a horse back in the 1700s, you had some money. So the reason I find a lot of suspender clips is from the 1600s into the 1700s, when the men were pulling the plow themselves. So we didn't have horses, just, the Spanish brought a lot of the horses, and they didn't hit up this way in full force, that everyone had a horse until later. But when this started out, to have a horse, you had some money. That meant you didn't have to pull the plow. And this township was built off that work ethic, and it was built off that. And that's the one thing I love about Lower Swatara Township, that I love about Middletown, and all the areas surrounding it, is that this was built off hard work. And it's relevant, and you can see it in the relics that you find. Buckles, D-buckles. I always joke, I always say, all I get is D-buckles around here. D-buckle is just a buckle, looks like that. Looks like it would be. Okay. And that was used for the horses. And you find a lot of those, you find a lot of belt buckles. Usually where you find the belt buckles, you find the suspender clips, because that's where they were put. And, it's just interesting, and it speaks volumes for what this area was all about. And even when they hosted Camp Meade in this area, that's a big deal, that is a huge deal. We also, I don't know, did the Air Force Base touch the township, or is that Middletown? It's both? Yeah. thoughts of. You know, Noda. I mean, Noda, man, I love Noda. I found so much stuff there. You know, so many, because Camp Meade was there. And tent tighteners, coins, buttons, you know, it was just loaded with stuff. And that's in the 2000s when I got there. That's after people have been, you know, there for years. But, you know, those places, they're gone. You know, they're absolutely gone. And I'm just going to say, you know, whatever you can do it. And with that said, I thank you for your time, and I'll take any more questions you have. Oh, really? Yeah. Olmsted, right? Yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, really? Yeah, that was before my time. Any other questions? Well, I thank each and every one of you for coming out. If you want, please grab a sticker or a business card. Check out my channel. It's entertaining. You get to watch me get dirty, fall, have fun. And I just thank you all. And do what you can. Do what you can, and let's save some history. If you want to get in touch with me, all my information's in the card. And I want to thank Nancy and the organization for letting me reach out and do this. This is not what I do. I'm not a normal presenter, although I've done a few now. But Nancy gave me the shot, and I appreciate her confidence in me. Even with this one, I was sending her notes. Like, I'm not worried about it. And you know, and it's tough to get a lot of people interested in this aspect of saving history. It's easier to go buy something. We're antique dealers too, by the way. Old factory, old town. But it's easier to do that than to actually go out and physically save it. And I thank all the farmers and all the homeowners in the township that have let me onto their properties and into their lives, because I've made great friends. I can do all of Longview Road and stop the whole way and grab a bite to eat together. You know, but it's really nice, and you know, now, you know, like Mr. Fox, you know, the Bella J Farm, all those places are just beautiful places I fell in love with. If you get out, you're bored on a Sunday, do that Sunday drive. You know, head down Longview, head down the back channels of the township, come on back Foley Mill Road. Just, there's a lot of interesting things to see and do. So thank you all, thank you Nancy, and thank the organization. I appreciate it. You guys, if you want to walk by the artifacts, I will stay right here, and you guys can check, ask questions. I don't have any problem with that whatsoever. And like I said, the brown box, feel free to touch anything in there. Your hands will get dirty, but you might see something and go, hey, I remember this, or what is this? Thank you.
There's lots of goodies left. Help yourself.
You're welcome. No, no, no. They're the biggest. Not so long now.
Ron used to service my car. Okay. So then he fell. I tried to get him to speak to this.
No, that's what I'll say.
I know. I think it's good. Thank you very much. That's really interesting.
Thank you, that's all I needed to know.
Say about 5.
Sailor's Creek, where it was last out, fought for the strength. Fredericks took the wagon, pushed it to one country creek, and made it real hot. So when you went over, if you shoot down out of the barricade, plus you have to climb over, right? Well, we went there and I found axles of those wagons. I still wanted to take them. So, but you know, we'll find different stuff. We'll find, yeah, that's probably like the biggest thing I would want to do. Wheels, old iron wheels, if I get them up. But I've got them up there. You know. Oh, yeah, yeah. You know, I have all rusty stuff sitting on the garage. Yeah, there's a lot. Oh, yeah. Okay, they explode. Bigger it is, the more size.
I knew somebody, 50, 60 years ago, that's what he did. He had to find out where the old outhouse was. Because he collected bottles, when he closed in, pulled in the outhouse, a lot of times it was a bunch of bottles.
That's not
After so many years, it's just dirty.
The long channel, my review channel, we found bottles there. I'm sitting on, I dug up a gin for it, a month ago, and, I have a monster bottle. Now, that's pretty good full. Yes. And those bottles, the bottle I got was about $300. So, yeah, we got the,
That sounds better.
well, everything's, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it.
Yeah, I'll collect.
Yeah,
It's
no
dirt.
way,
It's just
dirt,
dirt.
and that's it.
Yes. Now, he was a bottle collector, that's what he was after.
Well, and they're also loaded with a bunch of this stuff too. You know, we can go out, yeah, I've even dunks, videos where I've done dunks, yeah, 20 feet, you have a bunch of new bottles. I get the most of that. Yeah, now generally some, I'd say it's 50, some of the behind there. They don't want to see it. Some people say, yeah, I love it, got some. And they don't want to hear it. Yeah, there's even videos we present. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah, I don't try to make it all, especially if it's their family home, what's it called? That's all, I'm more happy to help them. But, you know, I'll go out and stay on the road, a lot of places. Always nice to have it. But yeah, you know anyone, that's a concern, I love it. I'm in all kinds of Facebook groups and stuff like that. I have a company channel on Facebook, and we're all kind of, it's like everyone else. You go to special months, they call secret months, they rent everything around. You really out of there. That bad. You know, always money. Their fun, it's all about speed and moving. And then go out and national park where I'm going to the country. And actually, another country where there's stations down the country where there's nothing. So, yeah. I have not, but,
Yeah.
I can use one side. Like it's you walk and you're coming in on you're not, you see it all. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm over there reading. Yeah, I mean, I always be interested. Just, I'll be interested in one. I don't know. You know, be around.
Yeah.
Every time I say that, somebody says,
I lived in Arizona for a short period of time.
after 42 years of war, when the back was at a summer max.
Oh, yeah, I love it. I used to watch him every Sunday night. Saturday, yeah, Saturday. No, Sunday night. 11. Oh, Sunday nights at 11. Anyway, about, 15 years ago, I was over at Tampa, and they had a system. The first 5 seasons, red and green, I would have bought it. Yeah, I've seen all yes. But, really amazed me about that purpose. Later years before we were off, yeah. Doing all this
Pretty good.
stuff.
Oh, hey, I'm still on.
Women,
A bleep. That's all, folks.